Hello. Look at that. Fantastic. Everybody enjoy the keynote? Yeah? Cool. Me too. Welcome to Security at the Scale of Cloud. I had to check the monitor there because I wanted to call it Don't Adopt Cloud, it's scary and insecure. But apparently that doesn't roll off the tongue. And it sends the wrong message. I'm only kidding. I've been told to introduce Slido as well. So Slido, if you've not used it already, it's pretty cool. Just make sure you're in the right room. If you select the Security at the Scale of Cloud room, and then you can interact with the poll questions. I'm pretty sure you can send me questions and all that sort of stuff as well. And yeah, just try it. Hands up who scanned the QR code without knowing what it was first. So without asking, you scanned the QR code. Is that right? You're in the right room. Cool. Oh, this is my face. What a photo. I'm Kieron. I'm a security solutions architect with Softcat, and my job is to work with our customers to produce outcome-based consultancy across cybersecurity, cloud being one of the many areas that we divulge into, among other things, governance, technology, you name it. That's what we do, and that's what I do at Softcat, and my team does. And I've been in cyber for about 15 years, over 15 years now, because I've been saying that for the last year since I've been at Softcat. So it's about 16 years now. Every single Teams call, hello, I've been in cyber for 15 years. I started off in the armed forces. So that's probably why you're thinking you're too young to be in cyber for 15 years, hopefully. But yeah, I started off in the armed forces doing close support communications. So highly deployable tactical communications and signal intelligence. And now I've done various cyber roles, various sectors, ISPs, MSPs, MSSPs, all of the Ps and the Ss, all of the managed and all of the consultancy type stuff. And I'm going to talk to you about some trending security kind of, I don't want to say fears, challenges, shall we say, in cloud, which I'm hoping you'll all kind of engage with and agree with as well, right? Yep, that's right. Cool. Quick poll question. If you want to kind of interact with that poll, that would be appreciative. So centralized monitoring is one of the main topics I'm going to talk about. It's actually the first topic I'm going to talk about. So yes, fully. Nice. Right, hands up, actually, quick show of hands. Who is multi-cloud? Who is adopting multi-cloud? Centralized security monitoring across your multi-cloud estate. That's what I get a lot. It's like Ross. Cool, awesome. I take it that poll stays, doesn't it? If I click, yeah, cool, good. Getting the nods. Not at all. Right. That's the next one. Slightly more in-depth, that one. We're also going to cover Devsecops in a bit more detail. We're going to hit quite a few things within Devsecops. I'm actually going to take you through the entire Devsecops pipeline. But one of the second thing that we're going to talk about is supply chain. But we'll get onto that. Yeah, this is a big one. People think because they deploy their infrastructure as code that they don't need to test or secure that code. But if I said to you 10 years ago, hey, I'm building a server 2012 R2 build, do we have any secure baselines for that? No, you'd go, what? Same thing. Cool, right. I'll get into it now, and the polls will stay active, so please feel free to engage. So 3 challenges with hybrid cloud, right? Or just cloud in general, to be honest with you. Decrease in visibility. So, I mean, complexity is one of the many things that happens when you go hybrid cloud, when you go full cloud, when you have multi-cloud, and that's technical complexity. You have disillusionment, maybe internally, multiple teams, multiple vendors, multiple providers, multiple connectivity mechanisms, governance complications, you name it, it's there. And obviously that leads sometimes to a disparate security architecture, especially if you've migrated from on-premise to in the cloud, still some stuff on-prem, still some security controls that are specific for on-premise, maybe some that you've invested in with your cloud providers, for your CSPs, quite difficult. Skills is something I'll pick up at the end of this, actually. Supply chain vuln. Who is aware of the software supply chains? Quick show of hands. Aware of software supply chain in general? Ever heard of an SBOM? Anyone? No? Cool. You're in the right room. Pipelines. What we actually use to squeeze that software development lifecycle from a pipeline perspective, pipelines run on infrastructure. Pipelines take your code, your developer's code, if you're developing applications and software, directly from their laptop to your repos. Okay? That's dangerous if not done correctly. Ownership, yeah. Who has, hands up, quick show of hands again. I'm super interactive, by the way. That's why I'll just keep you, you'll be throwing your hands up and down. You feel like you've done a massive shoulder workout by the end of this. Who has completed a cloud responsibility matrix? Top man. Love it. Yeah, I'll show you what that is as well. Right. Security monitoring is a huge topic, and I could talk all day around it. However, what I'm going to do is everything from this point is super pictorial. So we're just going to chat around how this works. And what will happen is we'll build out an end result from this slide deck. So it's slightly more interactive than just some words and stuff, right? Now, the problem is with security monitoring is not all security monitoring is equal. Not all people give security monitoring tools such as SIM, XDR, MDR, any of those sorts of tools, SOAR tools, the correct information or the high fidelity information. We're kind of still a bit stagnant in this space where we have been probably for the last 20 years, where MSSP will come in, they'll deploy a SIM, whether that be cloud-based, whether that be on-premise based, and they'll go, give me everything, just whatever you've got, give it to me, I'll tell you if it's good. And that's still kind of quite prevalent in the industry. Multi-cloud complicates that even more. Things around security controls that you invest with your CSPs complicate that even more. So you might be in AWS, you might have CloudTrail, you might have GuardDuty, you might have CloudWatch. You might be in Azure, you've got M365 Management API, you've got Graph Security, you've got the whole, I'm not even going to go there with the Defender suite, right? Sorry, Microsoft, if you're in the room. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are actually quite easy to do if you isolate them. So, hey, forward me Graph Security API into my SIM tool, into Splunk, Logarithm, ArcSight, QRadar, whatever it may be, Exabeam. Yeah, cool, great, done. But that's kind of not really, it's a tick in the box, right? So the thing is, as an analyst, if you put yourselves in a security analyst's shoes that works in the SOC, they're not fully upfront with your cloud migration, with your cloud environment, and they don't understand what the goal of that is. Or they may not, they may do, don't know, depends. It's part of the collaborative kind of working space that we need to develop with cyber and cloud and dev, right? All in the same, hence Devsecops, right? Now, as an analyst, you need to picture a timeline of events for every single incident that you triage. Doesn't matter if you're a senior analyst, a junior analyst, doesn't matter if you've just started in the SOC. You need to picture a timeline of events. So those people that had multi-cloud and we were answering yes to the poll and going, yeah, fully visible, full monitoring across the multi-cloud estate. Have you spoken to one of your analysts and gone, how easy is it to visualize an attack across the cloud space? Has anyone done that? Has anyone had a problem or a challenge with their SOC, whether that be in-house, whether that be MSSP, of them going, well, I can't react to that threat, I can't triage that incident because I don't have the context, because it's super complex. That's the challenge, right? All monitoring systems are not created equally now. This market segment is super busy, super busy. I'm doing a lot of work with our customers at the moment, Softcat, basically telling them the difference between SIM and XDR. Hands up who could articulate in probably less than 3 paragraphs what the difference is between SIM and XDR. Your shoulder's tired. Knackered. I mean, it used to be regulatory and compliance and retention-based stuff, but that's kind of fell by the wayside in the last 18 months. XDR's pretty much got parity now with many next-generation SIM platforms. So it actually now is a case of you need to think about what your monitoring tool is giving you. Is it cloud native? Is it hybrid? Were they legacy on-prem? They've shifted their infrastructure to cloud. They're probably going through the same experiences as you are as a company, right? Be pointy with your use cases. Use cases in the security world, what we use to detect threats. Be pointy about your specific cloud threats. Use your knowledge base. Use your SOC. Use your managed SOC. Use any consultancy services you have for cybersecurity within your business. And map your threats correctly for cloud. Could be cloud-specific threats. Could be industry-specific threats. You should be threat profiling your business, right? And reflect that in your use cases. Don't just turn on standard use cases and think, yeah, that's cool, don't worry about it. I've absorbed CloudTrail, I've put guard duty in there. We've got some cloud-specific log use cases, for impossible travel, for risky logons, right? It's not good enough. We need to be more pointy with our use cases, more direct. It also limits that horrible word that we don't like in security operations as well, which is false positive. Build out. There we go. That funky little diagram means automation. I made it myself. Just laughing to myself here. This is really hard. Use SOAR early. Any security orchestration and response actions that you can leverage within your cloud estate, with your SIM, with your XDR tools, use it as early as you can. 2 reasons, really. 1, early in the kill chain is good. Stopping things quickly is good. That's common sense. You don't need a cyber expert to tell you that, right? And number 2, it's actually easiest to do it at that point. The low-hanging fruit of orchestration and automation is things around endpoint isolation. No, not particularly specific to cloud, but you could be using infrastructure as a service where you can isolate endpoints. It's integration with AAD, directory services. It's those integrations that will enable you to reset passwords, lock accounts, lock tokens, reset tokens, all those sorts of things. If you're going to do it early, which means it's easier to adopt, but it's also more effective, right? Software supply chain. Infrastructure as code, code libraries, images. How many of you use all your dev teams or within your software development lifecycle? How many of you use open source for all of those things that I just mentioned? Open source libraries, IAC scripts from GitHub, all these types of things. How many people use it? Someone put their hand up, please. That was a wave. So all of these things are great because they squeeze that software development lifecycle, right? However, they are all inherently insecure. They're not secure by default. And they're open to several types of attacks. Ransomware, yes, ransomware. Privilege access, leaking of privileges, stealing intellectual property, access to proprietary code, right? All of these things, all open in the software supply chain. Now, that's not just early on in the supply chain. Your runtime is also quite vulnerable. So if an attacker is able to leverage techniques in order to ingrain themselves in your software supply chain by doing any of those things that I just said, access to proprietary code, insecure CI/CD pipelines, they'll just move laterally and they'll affect your runtime as well. So if you're not protecting your runtime, which is probably the easiest bit to protect, to be honest with you, from a product basis, from a market basis in the entire SDLC, then that can be quite problematic. Also, what you can do with that is it feeds all the way back into your security monitoring, right? All the way back in. So you're going to get cracking telemetry from anything that you're running in runtime as well. Now, pipelines that deliver code, as I mentioned before, they work on infrastructure. That infrastructure is potentially vulnerable. The biggest thing that I could say to you is, bless you. That is bless you. That's it. Finished. The biggest thing that I can say to you, the one word that I would say to you is scan. Does anybody use SAST or DAST? Or IAST? Does anyone know what SAST, DAST, and IAST are? Static application security testing, dynamic application security testing, and integrated application security testing. Okay? Please scan. Scan as much as you possibly can. Scan continuously. Scan locally. That's your devs, right? Make them scan locally on their machines, on their laptops, on their instances that they're using to build code. Scan your repos. After your image build, you build it after your image build, scan your repo, right? Scan your registries. Scan in runtime. Keep scanning. Scan, scan, scan. Did I say scanning? Sorry. What else do pipelines and the like come with? They come with version control systems. Version control systems are not hardened by default. They are not hardened. So without logging protection and branch protection and these types of things, they're largely useless. So they need to be hardened, just like your container images, just like your infrastructure, just like your pipelines. All needs to be hardened, okay? How do we start to secure it from a high level, right? Everything starts with discovery. Discover your software supply chain and how it fits together. Discover repos, images, code, all of these things that actually fit together so your devs can work and so they can actually do their job right. SBOM, Software Bill of Materials. That's what we're kind of aiming to do in this discovery process, right? We're aiming to build a software bill of materials so we can greater understand how to protect what you actually have. Because if you don't know what you've got, right, it's like asset management. If you don't know what you've got, you cannot protect it, okay? Secure your IAC. Please secure your IAC. Terraform. You name it. Kubernetes manifests. AMI, please secure it, scan it. Don't just take templates and use them and drop them into your CI/CD, right? Love the way this builds out. Basically, everything that we have just mentioned and talked about there fits in to the Devsecops pipeline. Who's seen a Devsecops pipeline before I launch into this? No? Laura, have you seen it? You just stood up? No? Good. Okay. Built this one. So the idea of Devsecops and the challenge with Devsecops is most people have only just got over implementing DevOps, right? So implementing and inserting security into what is probably taking you quite a while to foster good relationships internally around DevOps, foster it as a methodology, get people backing it, get people behind it. It's quite hard to then go, we want to insert security in there now. So it can be quite abrasive within an organization, but you know, all of those things that I mentioned in your planning phase, baselines, that's baseline configurations, threat modeling. Threat modeling, often not done well, often quite confusing. You can kind of, any application you're doing, it's easier to threat model one by one, as opposed to looking at an entire environment and trying to threat model that instead. That's quite, you basically end up with a lot of trees, chaining a lot of things on. It's quite difficult to keep track. Source code versioning, we've talked about. Do that in code. Secret scanning, local static application security testing, local secure code. All of these things not only search for vulnerabilities in your code, bad code, but they'll also search for bad repos, all of these types of things, your imaging, your VCS, your versioning control, they'll also search and scan for that as well. Build and test. Separate environments are actually mentioned. So segregation of duties kind of comes into your pipeline, right? So if you're doing updates and testing, that should be separate. You don't really want to be leaking across those two and making yourself quite vulnerable, okay? Anybody know the difference between SAST, DAST, and IAST? So interactive security testing effectively blends the best of both worlds, but the key thing to take from it is continuous. There's a lot of scheduling that you have to do with SAST and DAST. So schedule it statically. I'll schedule it dynamically when I've built out the app, all of that sort of scanning. Very much like you would do in vulnerability management scanning with your network scanning tools, okay? IAST enables you to schedule and do things more interactively as it suggests, right? It's more continuous, and it does it across the Devsecops pipeline. Centralized secret scanning. If you've noticed, everything that I said about scanning, this will build out, by the way, so if you want to take photos, I'd wait till the end. Or you can just take photos as I build it out. It's all good. Scanning's mentioned a lot, and I mention scanning a lot because at every sort of cross-section of your code development, your software development, I should say, we are scanning. That's critically important because if you think about how that's developed, it changes. Therefore, if you change something, you need to know the variables and the barometers and what that change is, right? Training is an interesting one. We touched, the guys touched on skills in the keynote. The two most prolific areas for lack of skill is security and cloud. So if you put them both together, if you have a security guy that knows dev and cloud, he's a unicorn. If you have a dev guy that knows security, he or she's a unicorn. They're a unicorn. It's super difficult, and the recruitment market is massively fluctuating at the moment anyway. It's like the housing market, it's ridiculous. So it's super tricky. So if you can target devs or anyone that builds applications within your dev team and introduce the concept of secure code, introduce maybe even product sets that allow devs to get on board without forcing things upon them, then it's quite advantageous. Encrypt everything. Yes, please encrypt everything. Don't encrypt everything, otherwise I probably wouldn't be stood here right now. That would probably be in my presentation, just encrypt everything. Now, it basically just means where you can use MFA, just use MFA, okay? Where anything that is communications-wise, use TLS. It's not, we don't have to overcomplicate it. We just have to do things that we're doing best practice in other places and just take them with us. Now, all this stuff at the end is probably stuff that you're probably more aware of, used to seeing WAF, SIM, those sorts of things. Bug bounties, it's not for everyone. Most smaller organizations are not going to do fully paid bug bounties. They're going to be vulnerability disclosure programs effectively. So feel free, I don't know if any of you do that, but it's worth considering if you're developing a lot of apps and those sorts of things. But yeah, Devsecops. I feel like I'm using a remote. I mentioned governance and cloud responsibilities. Super important. The dullest part of my talk, so I do apologize. Please understand what your responsibilities are. It really does kind of tie all of this together, right? I'll leave that on the screen for a little bit longer because you may want to read it. I'm not going to read it verbatim. Depending on your model, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, SaaS, function as a service. Again, I appreciate not everyone is using functions as a service right now. It is kind of a sub-divide of serverless. However, it's more kind of in tune to people who are developing Android apps, for example. It can save them a lot of money. Your responsibilities change. The complexity then arises from how you're doing different parts of your business, maybe using or leveraging separate parts of these kind of models, right? Super important. The whole finishing article on what we've just built is a target operating model for how to secure your cloud. So all of these things stitched together with a layer of governance and skill and people that we've already mentioned to effectively mean, hopefully, you can scale your cloud with intrinsic security, right? Technically, from a monitoring perspective, from a governance perspective, using methodologies, right? I think that's the last slide. Yeah, it is. Okay. Thank you.